Hi, Mr. Vaughn, and good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. In this podcast, I chose to talk about drugs in the Third Reich, or more specifically, my topic, how high were the Nazis? So let's just get right into it. First, I'm going to talk about the civilian usage in Nazi Germany. In the 1920s, Germany was in dire need of pain medication or pain relievers. The Weimar period, which was basically post-World War I in Germany, it contained the glorification of jazz, cocaine, and prostitution. During the Weimar period, sex was at an all-time high, and cocaine usage was also at an all-time high. The Weimar period also contained, for Germany, the revenge of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, and the rise of Adolf Hitler. Morphine was popular among World War I veterans at this time. Nearly 40% of Berlin doctors at the time were addicted to this drug. When the Nazis took over political power in 1933, they wanted to get rid of any trace of the Weimar period, which meant they wanted to clean up the streets of any prostitution, limit the drug usage, and better Germany. They wanted to get rid of the ideology of the past World War times. A pharmaceutical company that was based in Berlin called Temmler introduced a new drug to the shelves in 1938. This was the miracle product for extreme focus and energy. This was the greatest and newest drug. It was in a pill form of crystal meth, and the pharmacist named it Pervitin. The whole Nazi Germany was on drugs. Your milkman was probably on drugs, your babysitter was probably on drugs, your bus driver was probably on drugs, and even your own grandmother was probably on drugs at this time in Nazi Germany.
Oh my gosh, this is only the beginning.
Nazis and drugs are bad, Cameron.
Yes, I know. They are bad. This is why we're going to look into the author of the book, Blitz, Norman Ohler, explain more in detail about how methamphetamine was glorified as a healthy energy booster for the common people of Germany and Nazi German soldiers.
The story is that when the Nazis took power in 1933, they imposed strict laws against drugs. They were the first German government to actually wage a war on drugs. But then, in the mid-1930s, there was a company in Berlin called Temmler, which developed a new type of medicine, as they called it in the beginning, which was methamphetamine, which they branded as Pervitin. And Pervitin, methamphetamine, which we now know as crystal meth, or that at least is the street name, was perfectly legal and was seen as a legitimate way of boosting your daily performance. It was like a potent cup of coffee.
While a lot of other drugs were banned and discouraged in Germany around this time, methamphetamine or Pervitin was like a rite of passage for the social class. If you didn't take Pervitin or this methamphetamine, you wouldn't be socially accepted. You were more open to success if you took this drug. If you took this drug, you would be a more successful person and have more opportunity than to a German that couldn't have this drug. This would be the name and face Theodor Morell of the drugs in the Third Reich. Morell would be Hitler's personal physician for 9 years, 1936 through 1945. Adolf Hitler met the Berlin doctor Theodor Morell in 1936 at a dinner party where Adolf Hitler offered a position for Morell to be his personal physician, where Morell obviously agreed to. During the start in 1936, Morell was just famous for giving Hitler his daily vitamins to maintain his proper health, to be, the best chancellor that he could be. It wasn't until the August of 1941 Hitler became violently ill. He was only receiving the previous drugs like vitamins and glucose, but they were no longer effective for him. This feared Morell. He didn't want to lose his job as Hitler's personal physician, and he turned to other injections. Dr. Morell injected metabolic stimulants, sex hormones, and even the prostates of young bulls and pig liver, but Hitler was a vegetarian, and he had animals' blood running through his, but nonetheless, Hitler had an instant recovery. This was the start of the end for Hitler's health and the birth of a drug addict. Since he got so used to these strong injections, he only craved higher doses and more frequent ones as well. By 1943, Morell had started injecting Hitler with high doses of opioids. His physical and mental health were declining to soon to almost be rock bottom. Oxycodone, which had a much similar effect to heroin, became Hitler's best friend and his lifeline. But by 1944, oxycodone could not even be effective to Hitler. He needed something more. Morell provided intravenous glucose and meth for Hitler when he would request a shot of energy, and Morell also prescribed barbiturate tranquilizers for insomnia and ketamine stimulants if Hitler was oversedated. Theodor Morell was the cause of Hitler being a full raging drug addict. Since oxy wasn't enough for Hitler, he would have another physician at this time named Dr. Erwin Geising. Geising would provide Hitler his own personal cocaine. Hitler would receive 2 doses of high-grade coke a day on top of oxy. Since we cannot forget, this was obviously during a world war, so unfortunately for the junkie Germans and junkie Hitler, the Allies bombed many German pharmaceutical companies in the December of 1944. So the production like methamphetamine or Privitin, as you would call it, or oxycodone, that slowed down astronomically. Now, the Allies at this time were overpowering the Central Powers. Hitler at this time completely ran out of his precious drugs of opioids, how sad, before he went into his bunker, the Fuhrer bunker, which was the last headquarters Adolf Hitler used before he killed himself. This meant his reign was almost to an end. Towards the end of the war, Hitler granted Morell permission to leave the bunker and escape back to his home country, Berlin. There was alleged rumors of Hitler breaking down, claiming he was going to kill himself without Morell's drugs, and Hitler spent his last days going through withdrawal, cold turkey in other words. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler would kill himself in his bunker in Berlin by swallowing a cyanide pill, then shooting himself in the head. Conclude, at the end of the reign of Morell and Hitler, between August of 1941 to April of 1945, Morell wrote in his notes that he gave Hitler a total of 800 injections, and he varied Hitler's medications almost 1,100 times. Right, and that concludes my podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it, and these are all the sources I used to make this beautiful masterpiece.